So like, tell me, tell me who you are and what you're doing, what your pretense is, what you're trying to find out or trying to teach, or what's going,
What's the deal? So,
what's the essential knowledge?
yeah. So I mean, I was raised Catholic, and it is what it is. I'm not here
Hold on
for
one second. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to turn you up a little bit. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And could I get you to talk just a little bit louder?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I can get or project. No problem.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll move the mic closer. There you go. Yeah, I was raised Catholic. And
Okay.
that's how I kind of came to know Jesus, really, and what he did and what transpired, and that kind of lent itself to developing my relationship with what I understand God to be. Now, with respects to religion, that's not what I'm about. You say religion and war starts. It's more of just been a spiritual journey, as the title of your slide says, of just really understanding what's transpired over the time that we've been here, and obviously seeing what's transpired within the what's in front of us, right, from a standpoint of religion and the built form, and I can go on and on. But it's like pick whichever hole you want to jump into, and we can go full bore for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, and you brought up, Catholicism, and I actually went to seminary for a while, and I did, some language study in Hebrew and Greek. And so I have, kind of a background of that a little bit. I left seminary when I realized one thing, that the Bible itself, the canonized Bible, I'm going to say the canonized scripture that the Western Church prescribes and says this is the full and total Word of God, which I think is horseshit, by the way. But the canonized Bible itself 100% supports Calvinism. 100% supports Calvinism, which I fundamentally rejected at the time. Okay. I don't necessarily reject that the same way as I used to, because I have a different sort of outlook on some things. But my takeaway from it was Calvinism basically means you don't have any control or have any say in what happens to you eternally.
Okay. When you say Calvin, and it's funny because when you say Calvinism, and again, I am going to 100%, I'm going to freely open and give this over as testimony to say that I consider myself to be a village idiot. I don't read books. I'm a man of numbers.
Okay.
I studied architecture all my life. So I've come to know the universe from a built form perspective.
Okay.
Nothing else.
Okay.
So you say Calvinism, and I think of gas, which is why I got in touch with you to discuss the ether.
Sure.
And that is how this all came about. Because again, I don't need anything in the Bible.
Well, it's related though.
Hold on.
It's related. Calvinism is actually related to the ether.
But exactly, and that's what I'm saying. So bear with me and allow me to preface our discussion in saying I only need the first column of scripture to engage in conversation with you. And that's to say, on the second day, the Lord made the firmament. And yes, there's going to be people out there that transpire and say, not transpire, but there's going to be people that squash that and say, no, he made the space, he made the lid, there's all kinds of perversions of what he made on the second day.
Yeah.
So let's establish the fact that your age of the Bible will dictate what you knew he made on the second day.
So expanse is a good word for it. Some translate.
No, it's not. Sorry to be.
No, it's a good, it really is. It really is. Let me tell you why I think it is. Okay. And then you tell me why you think it's not, but fair enough. We don't have to share the same idea. I love.
And I appreciate
why
that.
I think expanse, the word expanse is actually a good term for it, is because it's the root, the word is rakia. Okay. And what it's really saying, rakia comes from raka or roka, which means basically to pound out
And
something out
make
of
flat.
copper.
And make flat.
Rakia is not quite a noun. See, here's sort of one of the, like, and it's a very, very stupid trick that the deceivers use, but people fall for it all the time. And they'll take an adjective and try to treat it as a noun.
Very good.
So as they will say particles or waves. Well,
Very good.
a wave isn't a thing. A wave is something that something does. The ocean isn't waves. The ocean is water, and wave is something that happens on the ocean, right?
Very good.
And so with firmament, I think that that's kind of the same thing that's happening. Where
A perversion of the term.
Right.
Correct.
So rakia is really sort of like, if I'm in the middle of pounding out a bowl from copper, what I'm doing, what you're seeing as it's being done is rakia.
Very
So
good.
it's sort of it really almost sits in between noun and, you know, adjective. And it really kind of is both.
Very good.
So that indicates to me that what's happening there is there's actually a continual thing happening. There's something that's continually creating it. And so it wasn't like built and then just, you know, like an ant farm and then just like you're putting a ball. Do you know what I'm saying?
Very good.
And so that's why I think, and I think expanse kind of describes that better than firmament.
Okay. However, again, your arms, and I say this respectfully, your arms are too short to box with God. So I'm going to go back to prior versions of the Bible, okay, as far as I can go. And the last term that I heard was the firmament. Okay. I'm parking that 100%.
Sure.
That's it is what it is. That's what he created on the second day. Then comes what's within that lid, the firmament being the lid, right?
I'm with
what
you.
Is in that? Now comes the idea of the petri dish.
Right.
Comes the idea of the ether. The ether is the gas that fills the lidded dome petri dish. Okay. Firmament created day 2. He inserted the lands into the waters and the waters and the waters and created the heavens, etc.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. No, I think that's extremely astute, actually.
Okay.
I think that's one of the,
again, extremely astute. And let's use your words, because we need to be very conscious of the words that we use when we're speaking to people who read words all the time. You said that was very astute from a man who studied numbers, my friend. Continue.
Okay, so can you expand on that a little bit? It's like I'm having trouble following with that.
In terms of what you said, astute. So the definition.
I mean, I think it's very accurate. I think it's very accurate.
It's very accurate, right? And I'm saying to you that I grew up studying numbers, right? Architecture, right? Built form, right? Sure. And the word astute is a term or a name that you would put towards someone who presents a smart idea, right? Because these are just ideas.
Absolutely.
Right? I take them as gospel, right? But and again, I say this respectfully, whoever's listening to this, yourself, that is not a reality that you're at a point of accepting, but you're willing to entertain it because you're here asking questions, which I truly appreciate.
So I approach everything. My epistemology is one of something that I have what I call myself, what I personally have named pragmatic spiritual distillation.
Okay.
Everything that I know about science, I learned from studying spiritual texts. I don't know that much about science, but what I've done is I've learned to assign actual physical things to the allegorical story behind it. And it's which is exactly what you just did in describing the ether, and then comes the next. And I actually think that the creation story itself tells the chronological story of what would happen if you had an uninsulated dielectric circuit all of a sudden start to form.
Uninsulated, okay.
Okay.
It'll create an explosion, but go on.
Well, I mean, you're creating like a Gaussian field.
Okay.
And
I see insulated and I think uncontrolled, therefore it's exposed, right? And I see at some point
there has to be some sort of vehicle that's existing there for it to start.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm saying? And so and I'm not there yet, but it feels to me uninsulated in the fact that the field itself is what creates magnetism, just by its dielectric properties as it starts to just exist on its own. And it's what creates magnetism. It's what creates sonic vibration or sonic frequency at low levels, like sine waves. And this is happening inside of a water type realm. Okay. Whereas in one of the things that Thales was freaking extremely fascinating. And this is if you watch the moderation I did with Craig and Fight the Flat Earth, I asked him early on, do you know about Thales? And he's like, no, I don't. And I said, well, you should read. I mean, because I told him then Thales is credited, and there's a lot of evidence to back this up, as being the first person who's actually accurately predicted a solar eclipse. And Thales believed that he believed that we lived inside an enclosed realm that everything was made of water, and that the earth was a flat plane that was fixed on top of this water. Very similar to Hebrew, Eastern, very similar to all the ancient beliefs about the world that we live in, that it was an enclosed realm.
Have you seen quickly to interject on that point, have you seen the definition of firmament in the 59 encyclopedia?
I have the 59 or the 58?
59, 58, apologies, late 50s.
Yeah, the one where it said it was 13,000 feet high above the Antarctic wall.
It was very prescriptive. It was very prescriptive in the description of the firmament, which is why I relate the definition of firmament to day 2, right? And that's the aspect of things that make that connection for me.
Sure.
The definition of that being there last written.
Well, see, and there you go. And further proof of the ether, shall we say, is that let me ask you, as somebody that is an evidence-based, mechanically driven individual, somebody that studies numbers, like you say, where do you think we store knowledge internally when we learn something new? Where does that knowledge
out? Yeah. Sorry, give me the last part of that again. I got horribly distracted.
Oh, no problem. So if I download information onto my computer, I store it in a hard drive, and it's stored internally, right?
Right.
Do we do that ourselves? Are we storing information
sure.
internally?
And
are you sure?
Well, here's the thing. I use the idea that when I explain, and again, I come humbly before you, understanding principles, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm reinforcing those principles through the way that I speak, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, in terms of the aspect of looking at the mind as a memory computer, right? Mm-hmm. RAM, you have RAM, and you have your either it's a solid state drive, software, whatever the deal is with the drive. Now, sure. In terms of when I say something to somebody, I, in my mind, think about the drop going out mm-hmm. and entering space. It hits the lake or it hits the water. It reverberates out, or the vibrations go out, and whatever comes back reverberates, right? That's mm-hmm. the space that I look to create when I'm speaking with somebody. And to me, that's when they actually stop and think, that is actively onboarding information to the idea that you're presenting. The person's actually considering it. So when that happens, that's for me, in my mind, as an empath, I see somebody actively swapping out information on the fly, sure. or actively storing it in their RAM, so it's randomly accessed, so it's in the forefront, or they're storing it in their back, so it's their access to be later on.
Gotcha. So I would say my kind of thoughts about this is that we're not actually internally storing the information. What we're doing is we're creating pathways to our connection into the etherical world around us that actually holds that information. And so that's actually where the hard drive is. It's not inside of you. You're part of the function of that computer that has its own function, and that's sort of what your consciousness actually is kind of functioning as, but you're drawing it consistently from around you. So there's one of the things when I first got into kind of the discussion of flat Earth, okay, I never believed that the Earth was a globe. I never accepted it. I mean, I acted like I believed it. I had to take tests when I was in grade school. I understand.
You had to play the game.
Yeah, but I never really questioned playing the game. I was just like, okay, this is stupid. I don't really think this.
What's
is
your
true.
background? What did you study?
Yeah, but I mean, but I also thought to myself in the back of my mind, I thought to myself, I don't really believe this is true. What's wrong with me? Why don't I believe this?
What did you study?
Yeah, yeah. And
hello, can you hear me?
What was your question? I'm sorry.
What did you study?
Well, I'm just talking about in school, like in grade school.
No, but yourself personally. What did you study in school?
Well, I studied Hebrew, I studied Greek, I studied
so just written
theology, but
written.
But it specifically, I guess I'm struggling with the question.
My in asking you that question, it paints the idea of left brain versus right brain.
Oh,
artistic
I see.
Versus science. That's
I see. So I was a martial artist, and then I wrestled and I played sports, and then I took art classes, and I gave just as much fervor to the art classes as I did to the martial arts. As an adult, I went to seminary. I worked as a truck driver. I worked in sales for a long time. And then I was also a professional musician for a lot of years. I kind of fall in the middle a little bit when it comes to that. I sort of like to exercise both of those parts of my brain, but I will say that I would probably default to more conceptual or artistic side of things. So
fairly stated.
But yeah, so but that, I guess that, then that's kind of what I was getting at, is that the only thing I think that you can consciously say that you experience when you're answering a question or you're taking a test or you're learning something is that you've learned how to access that knowledge. Like that knowledge is not consciously like in the forefront of your mind all the time. And you're like, oh, and you think, okay, I got to remember, I got to do this. You're backing up. And this is where it comes to the ether, is that we absolutely, as a species, have a horrible thing where we want to be in control of everything. And we want to believe that we have, and just believe, and we want to be in control. And we fundamentally don't understand our entanglement in the world, and it is in the realm. And so that's that, you bring up I'll bring up the dual slit experiment. Are you familiar with the dual slit experiment?
I've seen it, and
it's actually, I think, really, really fundamental. I think it's really important. So essentially, to make a long story short, they were shining lights through a tiny slit in a screen against
two slits,
right?
Yep.
And they put another slit in. Yep. And at first they noticed that when you looked, sometimes the lights acted like a wave, they said, and sometimes they acted like a particle. Because what actually happened is that fundamentally what they found out is that it took Einstein's speed of light and it proved it wrong really quick. And so they're like, well, we can't have this. This is going to go in this weird box. We haven't figured out the box yet. And so then they turn around and Einstein's like, oh, well, it's Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. And he said, oh, sometimes, they're waves, and sometimes the light is a wave, and sometimes the light is a particle. And okay, so to believe that, what you have to ultimately believe is that you live in a pressurized gaseous environment that is constantly leaking, but doesn't run out of pressure. And you can't quantify where that pressure comes from. So you can't really, you can't really answer that question. So you got to hide it. So a lot, and here's how they hide it now at an exoteric low level is they say, oh, it's a pressure gradient. So hence, I once in a while I get bored and I like to stir shit up on the stupid fake Facebook flat earth groups that you have a bunch of pseudoscience believers in there. And so I created this meme and I posted it and I said, Globers believe in an enclosed realm changed my mind. And oh my God, they had a meltdown. They're like, oh, it's a pressure gradient. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, so where does the pressure gradient run out? Well, it ends somewhere, right?
So I think that relates to my idea of the hot air balloon.
Okay. Okay.
So I joined the 24/7 flat
Oh, the flat Earth discourse
Discord community.
Yeah.
And the idea that I always keep putting forward is I go to the parking lot of the hot air balloon place, recreational facility, park my car, I get into the hot air balloon, psh, 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 up I go, right? So I'm no longer attached to the rotating, spinning curve, whatever. And I keep going, psh, psh, psh. At what point does that magic leash let go, and the balloon can actually witness the Earth moving beneath it?
Well, I don't think that there's honestly a clear answer to that question.
Okay.
I think that there is conceptual answers to it.
Okay.
But I think that has I think that that's one of the attributes of our entanglement in the ether.
So that, but from your perspective, your purview, that would be evidentiary, right?
I mean, I could throw, I could throw a ton of conceptual theories at it.
Okay.
You know, I could say we're following, the geometrical pattern of a toroid. Yep. And our consciousness is following the geometrical pattern of a toroid. And that's why we see day and night, and everything that we see, we're just making up in our minds corporately.
Right. But
and yeah, exactly. And individually, we're just part of a circuit. I could say that the ether itself is spinning around us, and that's why things look like they're moving. The last thing that I could justify saying is that the earth is moving. That's the thing that's that's absolutely, just from that basic standpoint. And you can't have that conversation with somebody that thinks that Einstein was smart, because they're literally the only way you can think that. You can't have critical thinking skills and an understanding of what Einstein tried to say and propagate and think it was smart. You can't have those things, can't coexist. You have to be lacking something. Period. Because essentially, yeah, it's a pressure thing. You either, the fundamental bottom line of it is, you are either living inside a pressurized enclosed system, or that space is a real thing. Now, here's the kicker. This is why ultimately it all means you're living inside a pressurized enclosed system. I'm gonna explain it right now. Space would be the 0 point where that pressure eventually just dissipates completely. That would form a line of demarcation, because if that's the 0 point where there's all of a sudden nothing,
the release, I would call it the release.
Well, you could call it the release, but once it's gone, what then is beyond that has 0 properties and is unable to be acted on or act upon anything. And that in and of itself, exactly, that in and of itself would form a barrier. Yep. And the only reason to think that you could leave that barrier in this physical body is if you don't understand how you're entangled into this realm.
Exactly.
And so that's why space travel is fucking ridiculous. Now, basically what they've done is there could be a geographic area that could be defined that is much more vast than we know. Certain people know, but we don't know, because they don't tell us. They don't let on. So we live in a smaller and smaller and smaller bubble all the time. Think about it, if the ether, what it's creating. Think about the implications of stuff like radio towers, and the implications of other sort of towers that are put up that send signals back and forth, which, by the way, rely on the ether existing for them to actually work.
Yep.
That's the other thing that's so amazing about it, is like,
it's all vibration, baby.
Right. And but you got a lot of like dumbed down people that are like, oh well, they're particles. The signals of particles in that tower.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Sure.
I saw you moderate that that debate,
Yeah.
right?
I thought it was very subtle.
I looked at you and I said, there's a man of reason. I'd love to talk to him. In my mind, of course.
Okay.
And you sent me a friend request. How many days later? Maybe it was probably about a week. When was the debate?
Oh, it was probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay. So at some point in time, I took that in.
Yeah.
And saw you. Right. And now, a couple weeks later, here we are. You sent me a friend request, and I quickly picked up the phone, and we chatted, connected, etc. So,
right.
Do you think that is ether vibration? Do you think that's causing it? Like, what's your explanation on that?
If I were in the middle of a lake and I couldn't swim and I was drowning, I would be, and I'm not trying to say that you're drowning or anything like that, but as example, I'd be flapping my arms as hard as I can, right? And trying to stay above water. And that would be causing ripples and waves and disturbances in the water around me, right? Okay. I wouldn't necessarily myself be emitting anything, right? I would literally be reacting to the situation that's around me. This is where entanglement gets interesting. This is where like Buddhism is interesting. I think you got to be careful. You got to be very careful with modern Buddhist ideas because they're really...
listen, hold on. Just remember classifying, right? Buddhist approach and things of that nature. These are just open discussions.
They're all, but it's all, they're all the same. They're,
because
exactly.
You gave the credit to the ether, right? So I'm asking you from a standpoint of you understanding the ether and the principles at hand, right? How do you measure something like that?
Well, there you go. I think
I don't think and a vibration is being sent out, and so someone receives that. If a tree falls in the forest, does it make a sound? Is that where we are right now? Well,
so where that right? That's kind of what I was getting at. So, okay. One of the I think the tenets of meditation, or the base tenets of exoteric, I'm gonna call it exoteric Buddhism, is being present, is what they call it, right? Okay. Which is a very hard thing to do. It actually takes a lot of concentration to actually be experiencing the moment that you're in, instead of thinking about what happened or what's going to happen.
And bear in mind, you're judging and classifying my experience for me, right?
Right.
Okay, got it.
Right. So yeah. I mean, it does.
I'm making lines very clear, which is something that needs to be done these days, because otherwise people start to throw you into all kinds of classifications as such, right? So I understand what you're pointing out, and I'm asking you intelligent questions responding to the information that you're putting forth. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So
what's your opinion on Jesus, by the way?
What's that?
What's your opinion on Jesus?
The son of man. So well, I mean, how can you trust what the canonized Bible says?
Okay. So that's where our disconnection is. Okay. No, and that is the thing, and that's what I need to do, because the idea here is, and what I've unpacked from consuming what I have. How long have we been on the chat for?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have a timer on it, but probably.
No, I just want to put it out there. So yeah, we've got to the point where you've mentioned spirituality and meditation and these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are all essences and forms of removing Jesus from the Bible, from the scripture, from whatever you want to call it, right? It's the idea that the man didn't exist. And this is exactly what is happening with this area that we've gone into.
Sure.
So the mere fact of, hold on, spirituality, right? Science, the S's are the problems that are occurring right now, because the man that did the walk for 33 years is the man that everybody has to know to understand, because you cannot come to the Father without knowing the Son. It doesn't work, right? That's literally an equation that you can plug together and get a final result on. 100% guaranteed. If you don't know the Son, you will never know the Father 100%.
Okay, does that mean we need to have the discussion within the confines of
No, my
Christianity?
friend. I wanted to set up the chat with you to discuss the ether because you and I agree.
Sure,
Our
and
common
that's
ground
what
is
I'm not trying to bring forth Buddhism. I'm
yeah.
trying to actually
I just asked
I
you a
was trying
question
to
about
actually
energy, and you put forth the idea of
bring the
Buddhism.
concept of being present forward,
Okay.
because the concept of presence I think is very telling in the ether,
Okay.
and as example of the dual slit experiment. Again, there are people that look at the dual slit experiment and they believe that what it proves is that you create and you yourself dictate whether the light is going to act as a wave or a particle. And they believe that it changes by you looking at it. Okay.
Okay.
And I think that that's where we lose our connection to it, because I think we don't pay attention or have appreciation or reverence. And this has become to I think to Calvinism. And this is where I brought up Calvinism, because I think it's actually related, because I think that you have the same misunderstanding with Calvinism. So initially my thought of Calvinism was that, well, God decided before he created you if you were going to go to hell or you were going to go to heaven, and you don't have a choice, because that's what they tell you Calvinism says.
Interesting.
But
and that's okay. Sorry, you go.
But the point being is that first off, you are not your body, right? Like you're not your arms, you're not your legs, you're not your feet. You are something different. You're a creation of God. You're a creation of the Creator, and your consciousness, your soul is part of that, and is part of that whole of all of it, and of all creation. And so when you live in such a way where your ego forms and you start to believe that you are actually making decisions, the reason that you believe that you're making decisions for yourself on a day-to-day basis, or even assumptions, or even having your own ideas, is because you have blinded yourself to the source that's actually given you life and everything.
Interesting.
And
I love that concept.
I'm trying to understand like our entanglement, because it's really, really, really hard to grasp, because it takes a bunch of humility on the onset.
Let me tell you
have to realize that you're not the master.
That's right.
I mean, you're like an attribute of the master.
Well, if you're going to bring ego into the conversation, and I learned literally, and I've been learning so much, but I learned today that ego is a teaching of who is it?
Ego, like coming as like my own. That's a Buddhist. It's a Buddhist teaching, right? It's attributed to Buddhism. Okay. Buddhism right now, but the thing about modern Buddhism, looking at modern Buddhism and thinking it actually is describing what Buddhism initially was, is like looking at the Book of Mormon and thinking it's describing what the Book of James is. I mean, it's not. It's it's related sort of, but not really.
Okay, so to classify what I see the ego as. Okay, I see the ego as any preformed conception that I can make in my head that is related to somebody else's creation. If I can remove those sunglasses completely, or those eyeglasses, or whatever you want to call them, and I can see them from the inner perspective of my heart, that is what we call the innate, that is called the Holy Spirit. That is divine intelligence that is being delivered, because it is without the purview or perversion of any man-created item. And that takes intelligence and humility to achieve. Am I saying anything beyond that? No, I'm not. I'm pointing things out as we discuss them.
Right here, what you brought this up. This is something that I had defined a while back on a podcast I did on the Big Skinny Show. The differentiation between science of the living and science of the dead. So right now, the only accepted way we have of gathering information about our physical world is through our 5 lower sensory perceptions. But I so we can stand around a tree and say the leaves are green, and we can all go, yes, the leaves are green. We agree. So they're green, right? I do believe we possess a higher perception that's still usable, that used to be used a lot more. And it's like you're talking about. It's the Holy Spirit. I think that a lot of times it's faith. I think that
Exactly what it is, my guy.
yeah, because
But a lot of people will look at you today's day and age and they say, "Oh, blind faith." Like anybody listening is, "Oh, you just got blind faith." Yeah, I do.
right,
That's the
exactly.
unfortunate part. And the thing about it is the edification of what I possess in terms of understanding and everything else, because my green screen's going absolutely nuts. I'm going to go off camera in a minute, but I love to continue the conversation with you.
Yeah, because I want to
No,
share something. I want to share something with you for sure. But yeah, go ahead.
No, sorry, I lost my train. I'm gonna just disengage on the camera.
Well, Hebrews 11. What's that?
Is this distracting to you or no?
No, it's fine. You're fine.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So here's something for, and I'm going to give you my take on this, and then I want you to give me your take, because I think I might be interested to see. So Hebrews 11 verse 3, it says, "Through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were made of things which do not appear."
Which do appear.
No, well, I wrote it wrong. We're not made of things which do appear. I'm sorry, I read it wrong. Excuse me.
Hebrews 11:3.
The word of God. So things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. We're not made of things which do appear. Does that make sense?
Hebrews 11:3. What version?
This should be the how it should be the King James version. I usually
NKJV or
no, not the new one. No, I usually don't use anything different.
No, that's awesome. And another thing you can double check is what God gave instruction to Noah to make the ark out of. If it's gopher wood, your version is bad. It needs to be spruce.
Absolutely. It's almost like he's describing how to make a dielectric circuit with the ark.
I just took it as 150,000 square feet of floating space, or floating storage space for the animals.
There you go. So through faith, we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that the things which are seen were not made of things which do appear. So the things that we see were not made of things that we see. Does that make sense? Everything we see is a reaction.
Things that we see, so basically cause and effect.
Yeah. Okay. And so everything you see is a reaction of something that's happening that you don't see with your lower sensory perceptions. Perception. I think that faith, the term faith, I think this is one of the terrible things that the Western church has done to Christianity and done to people. Is I think that they turn around, and without people having knowledge, you have knowledge of something because you've ingested it, you eat it. So you take a bite of an apple, you know how the apple tastes. You take a bite of an orange, you know how the orange tastes. You have knowledge of the Father, you have knowledge of the Son, because you have intimate knowledge that is entangled within you of what it means and what it says. You shouldn't need to be preached to. You shouldn't need to have to be publicly baptized. You shouldn't need to have any sort of like public testimony in order for you to have a relationship with the Creator.
Of course not.
When I remember
it's ignorant to pray in public.
Well, sure, exactly. And I think that the term faith, can mean a lot of things. And I think the way it's defined right now, I think is untrue. I think that we have an intrinsic connection and knowledge of the realm and creation, because it's part of who we are. I mean,
that's what you, okay. And it irks me when I hear people talk like that. And because it's an attempt to short circuit the system that he created. Right. And that's what science and spirituality has done. They're attempting to create a short circuit where you remove I'm gonna throw 3 points at you. Mm-hmm. You're attempting to remove the Son of God from the story of God. One, right? There's been the building of the House of Abraham in the UAE, March 2022. Right. Mm-hmm. And there's a church, a mosque, and a synagogue, I believe. But the church there, you are not allowed to worship Jesus at the church. Right. And this is where you get into the changes in the wording of what he created and all kinds of different things when a new version of the Bible is created. So, my friend, I'm explaining to you and trying to edify the fact that without knowing the Son, you will never get to the Father. You can't do it. It's impossible. period.
I disagree with that because
Okay.
because of um, because of actual experiential things that I've had
Okay.
and that I had as a child.
Okay.
I understand, but I don't. Okay, let me. The fundamental difference and where what we're not going to agree on, the personification of Christ is where, and this is what you're saying, and this is what you're bringing up, and we, like you said, we wanted to talk about the ether, and then we got on onto this
Yeah.
onto
No,
this
I mean,
subject, which
it's
obviously we
organic,
don't
right? I
agree on,
said
but I don't
organic.
mind.
So
I don't mind having discussion. Discourse is
yeah.
fine. I mean, discourse is good. The I just don't want to I don't want to say something to make you upset.
No, no, no.
I feel like I'm gonna offend you here with some of it, and so
No, I speak from my spirit, my friend. That's strictly it. Please don't ever be offended with the spirit that I speak with.
well, okay, I appreciate that. What this is, what the Vesica Pisces is where the heavenly worlds meet the physical worlds, and they overlap, and it creates a symbol that looks like the ichthus. The ichthus is the Christian fish symbol,
Mhm.
right? That's
But this
called
is sky. This is sky science, right? This is sky stuff.
guy stuff.
Sky stuff. Sky stuff. We're
Guy
not
stuff.
attached to the
Yeah,
sky,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So
I
so
don't. I understand it, but
well, it's the shape of the rainbow,
I can't prove
and
anything.
it's the shape of the rainbow, and you see the ichthus in Christianity. You see this, and what so in Genesis, when God tells Moses he tells him to go up, basically he gives him the like you were talking about, the instructions on how to build the ark,
Right.
and he tells him where to go so he can give him instructions on what he's supposed to put in the ark, right?
Right.
And so he tells him to go up to Mount Sinai. So Mount Sinai, the name for it, it's got two different names, and you're talking about language, how big of a difference language can make. In Arabic, it's Jabal Musa,
Okay.
Moses Mountain.
Okay.
In Arabic means Moses Mountain, right? And in Hebrew, it means the place where Moses was taken away, essentially.
Okay.
That's a big difference. And up on the top, during the description of the ark being made, it kind of outlines the Vesica Pisces. It actually, so here's a study that I did. Well, if it ever opens, but it talks about the top where there's two cherubim that are meeting, and where they're meet, that's the Vesica Pisces.
Okay.
So this is Jabal Musa back here.
That's a mighty flat horizon, isn't it?
It's extremely flat, and there is
and 185,000
yeah,
feet up. It looks the same.
Exactly, yeah, and there's a reserve up there, and the reserve is named the Jabal Musa Biosphere. What is that about? That's what they call it, the biosphere. It's crazy. But here's just a quick little video, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on some of this stuff, or if you think I'm wrong on some of it, on this version of it from the Bible.
That the ark exists?
Yes.
Okay.
2.5 cubits long, 1.5 wide, and 1.5 high.
What kind of cubit are they discussing?
I do not know. Do you?
Just to clarify, Hebrew versus Egyptian. Moses wrote the Bible, right? Or wrote his parts of the Bible.
Well, this is Hebrew.
And Moses,
well, was it Hebrew or Aramaic?
Hold on, it's important to clarify though, because the Egyptian cubit, right, will lead you to an ark that is 515 feet in length. The Hebrew cubit, which came out after the Egyptian cubit, Moses was raised by the Egyptians, so he would have written the Egyptian cubit being 18 inches, the forearm length.
Wow.
The Hebrew cubit came out after that, so that's a major misconception now when they're actually looking for the ark. You
know what? I'm not paying any attention to the numbers on this.
Okay.
I'm paying attention to the structure.
Okay.
And every time I watch this, I think to myself, man, I wish I understood more about what these measurements were.
Okay. Well,
so I appreciate that. No, that's fantastic. That's awesome. You bring that. I need that.
inside and out. Make a gold molding around it. Cast 4 gold rings for it. Fasten them to its 4 feet. 2 rings on one side and 2 rings on the other. Then make poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Insert the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark to carry it. The poles are to remain in the ring.
So I know what I know, and I don't have all of the information on this yet. This is something that I think it's like years worth of study to actually
The Ark of the Covenant?
Yeah, to understand all of the details.
The Ark of the Covenant is the most important piece for you to understand Jesus.
Oh yeah,
The Ark of the Covenant is okay. Just as long as you know that.
I agree. Well, there's something else really key here too that I think is as important that you can't miss, and this is where you see like you'll see the Virgin Mary. You were Catholic, so the Vesica Pisces is the shape of the Virgin Mary. If you see the Eastern Orthodox artwork, they have Jesus depicted in the middle of the Vesica Pisces. It's definitely a part of what at least probably once was taught, I think, as theology. We're not really taught about it anymore, but it's here too in the Ark.
And put in the Ark the tablets of the covenant law, which I will give you. Make an atonement cover of pure gold.
Now, did you know that in Judaism, the 10 Commandments correspond with the 10 Sephirot, and they also correspond with what they call the 10 divine utterances. And so they take from the creation story, there's 10 divine utterances, and they correspond with the 10 Commandments. And that's like that. They take those two things together and put it in here. It's interesting. That's something that's interesting to read up and kind of just like explore their thoughts on it.
Okay, but are we watching? Okay, it's 2 minutes. It's all good. I get impatient with videos.
Okay.
Make 2 cherubim out of hammered gold at the ends of the cover.
Right here.
Make 1 cherub on one end and the second cherub on the other.
Yep.
Cherubim of one piece with the cover at the 2 ends. Cherubim are to have their wings spread upward, overshadowing the cover with them. Cherubim are to face each other. Look.
The Vesica Pisces. It's making the shape of the Vesica Pisces, and that's the point. And then it says right here.
Place the cover on top of the ark and put in the ark the tablets of the covenant law that I will give you. There above the cover, between the 2 cherubim that are over the ark of the covenant law, I will meet with you. Right there. So it describes the Vesica Pisces, which is sacred geometry, which is what Thales used to create Thales' theorem, which is also the basis of non-Euclidean geometry, which is what's basically, if you look at non-Euclidean geometry with an airplane and with navigation, they use non-Euclidean geometry to navigate. That's actually what they use. And that's the basis of the Vesica Pisces. And that shape, that truth is everywhere. And this is what I mean, like you can see attributes of the Father. Now, if we want to talk about without having like an acceptance of Christ in your life and to be saved, what does that even mean? Like, what does that even mean? I mean, because I don't disbelieve it, but there's a lot of things that I don't disbelieve that don't include that too. So I mean, what is your take, your feeling? What causes you to have salvation, to be able to escape this realm that we could die in and continue to go lower in, which I actually think is possible. But what are your thoughts there?
That was the question that I discussed and shared with you.
Okay.
It is the removal of, literally, and I say this for whatever you take this on as, take it on as for what it's worth. The removal of feeling. Literally, the ability to love. The way that Jesus taught, he always taught with love. You could always ask him a question, he would always answer the question. And he always taught to be patient, loving, and kind with your fellow brother.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
That is what is to know the man, is to know how to teach his word. right? It is a feeling of what people will always remember you for how you made them feel, not how much you knew.
Right.
Right. And that's very important.
That's very astute. Yeah.
Right. So from a standpoint of somebody being able to actively onboard the words that are being said to them in their computer as you say it, they have to feel good talking to you. This is why science and spirituality fall short, because they rely on a preconceived notion that you have to grasp in order to get to, right? You have to read something and actively take that on. It's not something that comes from the heart. Jesus taught you how to teach from the heart and love from the heart and put forward from the heart.
Yeah. I can't disagree with that at all. I absolutely can't disagree with that at all. What where I sit on it is that I question the modality of that story as given in the New Testament. And I question the modality of that story as given in the New Testament because the source of where it came from.
Okay, that's fair.
I don't think it's an out and out. I think there are some things that are actually, you know, that are a little I don't know, but I don't think it's like an out and out lie. I mean, the New Testament was essentially written by a Pharisee.
Okay, my friend, and we here's the thing, and again, we're getting caught up in the weeds, as I would say, right? Sure. Because we're discussing semantics as far as I'm concerned, because again, you're attempting to put labels on the people that created it and blah, 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 right? It's Copernicus, he did a thing, he wrote stuff. The right. Cavendish, he did a thing, he wrote stuff. I don't care about any of that stuff, man. I care about numbers, right? Mathematics is the law of the universe.
Yeah, but before any units of measurement where you're adding and subtracting really makes sense, you have to have the geometry straight, and that's where a lot of deception happens. Is well, because I could take a square. No, seriously, I could take a square that's or a circle. It's just called a circle. I could take a circle that's 3 foot in diameter, and then I could draw an interior circle that's 2 foot in diameter, and then I could show you all the evidence in the world that the only thing that exists is that 2 foot diameter circle, and then I could use math to prove what I'm saying is true. Okay. Is that true or false?
Definitely.
Okay. That's my claim, is that's part of what's happening. Okay. Does that make sense? And so I do think that goes into everything. And I think that goes including into scriptural things too.
So from a standpoint of, let me think about this here. No, I lost my train of thought. Apologize.
Okay. So that was what you're saying. This is the kind of a picture of Moses Mountain of Jabal Musa, where Moses received the commandments, which is crazy. But a lot of there's symbols and geometry in the Vesica Pisces. When you talk about feeling, I kind of think that that's related. It's kind of like it's telling a story that, you're not using words to tell the story because language fails. And and translation fails, and language even kind of deceives a little bit too. And so how do you express that? You have to express that there in this type of thing. But to get back, I guess to get back to the ether too, which I know that's what you wanted to talk about.
We've covered a lot.
Have you watched?
Are you at this point?
Are you familiar with Ken Wheeler? Have you watched any of Ken Wheeler's stuff?
Here's the thing, and I say I get impatient with videos, and I don't read books and everything else because I honestly look at something, and I'm like, hey, that makes sense, and I onboard it, right, and then I delete things as I go, and so on and so forth. And that's why, from a standpoint of knowing the fine details of things, is where I don't have patience for that. Right? I take on are you a Sagittarius, by the way?
I'm a Scorpio.
No way. October or November?
October, Halloween.
Wow. 31st. I'm November 16th.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, interesting. And that's the thing. You know about patience. I'm sure you've had your walk with patience. It also depends on what your ascending sign is. But those are all things, right? What I just said to you, those are all secrets of heaven, right? Sure. Books of Enoch, the fallen secrets of heaven, root cutting, all these different things. We weren't supposed to know about this stuff, the telling of the weather and all these fun things.
What do you mean? You don't think we were supposed to know about it?
Have you read the books of Enoch?
I've read some of it. I've read the description
Read
of the
books of Enoch
luminaries
and find out about the angels, and each of the angels, what they each brought to earth. And that's what will lead you to further discovery in your path, your journey.
Wow. So ultimately, where are you on that? I mean, so you think that Jesus is the truth?
Well, it's the lineage of man. You have to establish something like, I've been persecuted on YouTube for my evidence of Noah's Ark existing, right? But Noah's Ark exists. Newsflash.
Congratulations! If you're not getting persecuted, you're not doing nothing, right?
Well, if you haven't got a YouTube strike, you're not doing anything either, right? So, and again, understanding the lineage of the sons, Cain killed Abel, third son being Seth, that we are the lineage of Seth. You have Enoch, then you have Noah. I mean, I'm just obviously highlighting there's obviously people in between all that, but the major players, Methuselah and things of that nature. But you have Enoch, who is the scribe of God. Then you have Noah, who built the ark.
Now, Enoch didn't die, correct? Enoch ascended into heaven and became an archangel.
First man that God took and became angel, made into angel.
Metatron.
Metatron is his name.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
He's the one that possesses Metatron's cube, which is the sacred geometry 369, perversion by Nikola Tesla, presented here on Earth.
So that is interesting too. Now, are you familiar with the occult information on the Philosopher's Stone?
Please enlighten me. Go ahead.
And so the Philosopher's Stone is an elixir, and it's tied to alchemy. It's an elixir that
interesting. You should bring up alchemy.
Well, it basically and there's an Egyptian version of it now called Ormus. But
it's another twisted teaching.
But
right?
Yeah,
alchemy is another twisted teaching.
Yes. Well,
spirituality is secret to twisted teaching. Science is a twisted teaching.
So basically, the Philosopher's Stone, what it says is that it would allow it would extend life, and this is I don't think that this is true, and maybe it is, I don't know, but I think that some of these rulers that kind of like organize the deception of the world, I think some of them actually believe this, and they believe in the Philosopher's Stone. Maybe they have reason to. I don't know. That's conceptual, but Cagliostro wrote about the Philosopher's Stone, and what it is an elixir that would allow you to live a longer life, and then in certain cases up to 5,000 years, and then can allow them to live indefinitely outside of their physical body.
Okay.
And that's the symbols for it are basically, it's a positive charge, and basically what it does, it supposedly just gives them a complete positive charge forever, and they just continue to live on, I guess, as indefinitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Indefinitely.
Can you understand that at that point in time you're attempting to mess with the gifts of God?
Absolutely.
At that point, right? Like
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's a good thing. I'm saying
okay. No, but and that's where I'm saying that it requires. That's where the ego, right, steps in and says, okay, this is going to be a bad experience or a good experience, right? You trip on DMT, any of these hallucinogenics. If your ego's not in check, it's going to be a bad trip.
Yes.
Right? You've got to be aware. Awareness is key. Discernment is key. These are the things where the ego needs to be in the backseat, right? And the innate is controlling the car. Unfortunately, that's where we're supposed to be. Ego for the man now currently is driving the car.
Yeah. So in theosophy, which is another occultist belief and occultist way of teaching, there's a belief that the rise of particle science and Copernican science is commensurate with the rise of materialism, and so it's a process of wanting to become separate from the field. And they actually, and you can see this. I'm not, and again, this is an explanation of something. It's an allegorical explanation of something that you can see. What the theosophist, or the theosophy belief, is that we have seven epochs of this world before it kind of goes into a rest, and then we're in the fifth one, and every epoch is like there's different gods, there's all this different stuff. This is their belief, and that the past epochs have ended due to natural disasters, and that this particular epoch that we're going to end is going to end in what they call the war of all against all, to where it's eventually making everyone feel like they're separate and everyone can create their own reality, and they're trying to do, and then they think that they're going to make everyone destroy each other.
There you go.
And that
is the Battle of Armageddon, which will occur at the end of the 7,000 years.
Oh yeah, this is what I say about what I call pragmatic spiritual distillation. I don't have to believe a dogma in order for me to read and gain some insight that's actually can be useful from different ideas. The information is neither positive nor negative. Truth is just truth. Dichotomy is all false. And so if you can sift the garbage out, and you can be like, okay, this harmonizes with this and this and this and this and this, because they all have to have some sort of structural integrity, or else they wouldn't stand. There has to be a reason that everyone that people come back and go, no, I believe that my epistemology is correct, and that's why I stay with it and keep with it, because it's been evidenced to me in this way and in different ways. There has to be that element there. And what I'm saying is that there is one truth, and is Jesus? Do we need Jesus for that truth? I absolutely think that that's something that's very, very real, but I don't know how to completely define it yet. But this right here, you asked about the ether, and I was going to bring up Ken Wheeler. This is just a real quick demonstration. This is amazing. Basically, what he's got here, you know what ferrofluid is, right?
Ferrofluid, I would imagine it's a lighting substance of some sort, liquid.
It's like magnetic fluid. Ferrofluid. So it's like and so what he's created here is a ferrocell. So basically, he's taken 2 pieces of optic glass and some like mouse milk to use as a lubricant, and then just a little drop of ferrofluid in it, and he's got it glued together and taped together, and then he's basically surrounded it with electrical tape, and put the lighting in it is just a little LED strip light.
Okay.
And he takes a magnet to the ferrofluid, and he uses this magnet to show, to highlight a couple of different things about the ether. And it's actually a model of the ether.
Okay.
And it's magnetic. It's just pretty crazy.
I have a question for you after this.
Sure, no problem. Here, let me speed this up a little bit.
No.
So this is taking a neodymium magnet and turning it sideways, and it creates a hyperbole and a toroid, which are mirror opposites of each other. So you hear as above, so below. They're mirror opposites of each other, and one of them is accelerating and one of them is decelerating, basically. And if you look, it kind of creates that little double thing there. It looks like your brain, actually. It looks like kind of like your brain waves. Right. And then taking it and putting it underneath there, just like that. What he explains is that there's no magnetism in the center of it, and that's why you see this dark hole in the center. And what's happening there, like when we talked about, when I talked to you about like my magnet, if I turn it one way, it stays up on the fridge. If I turn it the other way, it rolls down and then stops right in the middle.
And my knee-jerk reaction was it's seeking rest.
Yeah, exactly. It's accelerating. So gravity is not a force. Gravity is an acceleration. And what's happening is that's like the sink. It's like the vortex of this energy field, of this field. And gravity is basically everything that you can see and you can perceive. This lighter, my phone, everything that has mass is essentially magnetism that's giving it resistance, and it's light that you're perceiving visually with it, and it's also its entanglement in the dielectric field that causes this to have mass. And what's happening is both of these are just like this little ferrocell that he's made, where the center, you see, it's the rest point, and this object is just accelerating towards the rest point of this object because it has more mass. And that's why things fall, right? I drop this and it falls. I don't have to throw it down. It's not a force, it's an acceleration. Force means I'd have to push it. Force is throwing something up.
Yep.
It's an acceleration. And everything within this, basically, and you can see one of the really, really interesting things about this is the thickness of this cell. And I'll get off the video after this and we can just talk. Is 1 micron thick. And it creates this holographic, almost 3D hologram. And so to think that we can, in this physical body, to first off not consider that the fact is, if this is the ether, if this is the ether and it's what's happening around us, we are being made inside of that whole thing. We're a part of it. You can't exist without it. That you can't exist outside of the light. You cannot not exist outside of the ether, and period. And
so you're effectively saying that, in essence, the idea of a prism is what you would put forth.
Partially, yeah, partially. A hologram, partially.
Okay. Hologram, interesting word.
Well, that's what the ether would. That's what the ether would suggest. Is that it's a hologram, and so space is literally the exact opposite of that. So space is something that can either act on anything or be acted upon. So just by those two attributes, it can't exist. So again, when it comes to people that believe in the globe, they believe we live in an enclosed realm. They don't know it or they won't admit it, but they believe that we live in an enclosed realm. People
based on what principle?
Based on the principle that the gradient pressure, supposedly moving out, has to come to a point where it stops.
Okay.
It will not infinitely go, right?
Okay.
There has to be a 0 point.
Perfect. Next question being, do you believe in asteroids?
Well, there's something that's happening. Absolutely. Do I believe that there are rocks that are coming in from an area that has no properties? That makes no sense.
Okay, no. You and I have already hung on the evidence board for our discussion the fact that we're in a closed system, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So my next question is, do you believe in asteroids in a closed system?
Sure. Yes. Sure.
Okay. How do you purport, or no, I'm not going to ask that question yet. Have you ever seen an asteroid post impact?
Not personally, not firsthand. I have not, no.
Okay. Even pictures smoldering, this just happened, anything like that?
I think I've seen pictures. I understand the concept of it, but I haven't seen anything reliable enough to know that I would say that this is what it is.
Okay. Let me park that for a quick second, right? The idea that we don't know what asteroids are finitely. Is that fair?
I mean, I would say I don't. Yeah, that's fair.
My next question to you is, and again, we're believing in the ether, right? There's a lid to the system. There's a cap, right? An expanse, the firmament, whatever the heck you want to call it. Fine. We put a cup of rubbing alcohol out on the sidewalk.
Okay.
Okay. That rubbing alcohol evaporates, does it not?
I believe so, eventually.
Okay. Does that rubbing alcohol still exist in the ether?
Well, yeah, of course.
What does
but here's the thing, though.
Okay.
Again, the rubbing alcohol, this is where the misconception of this is that the rubbing alcohol is the base element itself, and it's not. It's simply a reaction. It's a reaction of other things, and all of those other elements exist as well. And you break that all the way down, I think what you will actually find is the base element of everything is the base element of water.
Okay.
So does that alcohol exist in the ether? It's not like if you're asking me if I think that there's a drop of alcohol that came from your evaporation experiment that's floating around the ether that's going to pop out somewhere else. No. Do the elements that created it exist? Yes, absolutely. And you know what? They are also themselves. The reason that they're evaporating is because they are also themselves accelerating towards the void.
Okay. Accelerating towards the void or cap of the firmament, right? Because gas fills space. right?
Absolutely, sure.
But the only characteristics between gases that separate themselves from what's on the ground versus what's at the very top of the firmament is what I would humbly say, respectfully, is density.
Okay.
The density of the gas. Okay, how active maybe the molecules are within the gas, how excited they are. I don't know if they're further hot. I'm not sure. But what I'm saying is the thinness of the gas goes higher up. What I'm saying to you is, and I'm using the cup of rubbing alcohol to be very somewhat crude in my example of illustrating what I'm attempting to illustrate, is that rubbing alcohol evaporates. We observe this over time, that the rubbing alcohol evaporates. My question is, it turns to a gas, it goes up into the ether, and as crazy as it sounds, but again, I'm going to be crude in my reporting of what I believe is happening. You spot that asteroid / firework / ignited gas streaking across the ether. I'm going to say that it's nothing more than an ignited set of gases.
Okay.
Just thought.
So it's manifesting, in a different spot with different conditions around it, and it sort of, I think that from a standpoint of the ether too, I think where you can kind of understand. So when I brought up the scripture in Hebrews 11:3, where it says the things that you see that are made were made of things that do not appear. So it's saying that everything is a reaction. It's saying that the things that you see are a reaction. So if you can if I draw a straight line from here to here, I draw it like this, right? Okay. The ether draws it like this. Okay. Mother Nature, everything, this is how she draws a straight line. It's a perturbation.
Can I unpack that for a quick sec?
Sure.
What you just explained. So we had somebody drop into the chat today, and they made this nice drawing of a cross section cutting through them standing on a hilltop, looking and view lines and all kinds of stuff. I quickly chimed in and said, I understand what you're drawing. However, you're illustrating this, right? Yes, the L, take the L, whatever you want to say to it. You've got the y-axis understood, right? You have the you've got the x-axis understood. You've got the y-axis understood, right? Up and down. You're missing the third axis, the one that's coming out at you, the z-axis, right? Because you need that third dimension to give whatever it is you're looking at essence of being. Otherwise, it's just a piece of paper.
Okay. Okay. So then as the condition, so as the alcohol itself evaporates, the conditions change, the rate of induction of the perturbation changes because it's accelerating and it's slowing down because what it's trying to do. So what it's trying to do is it's trying to go around the whole track to get to the center. It's like a vortex.
It's
okay,
seeking its rest point.
right. And it's so it's not moving this way and then just only moving this way. It's moving like this. It's like
gas fills a box. It seeks its rest spot. It's not trying to fight anything. It's not trying to find gravity. It's not trying to find force. Gas seeks its rest spot.
Exactly. Because one of the things that's what really shows this with the Cavendish experiment, and I've looked at several of them, especially since doing the Fight the Flat Earth thing, because I was like, hey, cool, that's awesome. Let me look and check out and see what's happening here and see what I think about it when I take away from it. And what I've looked at them is they hang a torsion bar and they balance it, and then they put the two objects that it pulls, those objects accelerate to. If it were going towards the biggest mass, my argument is that it would still do this or this, even it wouldn't be moving because it would want to be going down. If it was a force that's pulling it down, even though it wouldn't go left and right or clockwise or counterclockwise, it would probably hold still like it would in a magnetic field. And so that's why he's
canceling out the idea that like attracts like.
Right. Exactly. I mean, even if it was because first off, it's probably not going to be, most of those experiments are not going to be perfectly balanced unless they really have a skilled person putting it together and doing it. let's face it, you create your own torsion bar out of a dowel rod, you hang it up as close to the 0 point as you possibly can, you hang it up in your ceiling, and you put two weights to counterbalance each other.
Dude, I get it, but the thing about it is, and again, and I hate, like, at the end of the day, somebody says Cavendish, and instantly I say, you have canceled out the one law that we know to be seen, which is like attracts like. That's a principle of the universe, right? So automatically you've thrown that whole experiment's bunk. Sorry.
Well, no, I think it's right observation, wrong explanation, like you just said.
Yeah.
And it's an acceleration, not a force. And I think you would see something different if it were a force. But so I guess to answer your question, I think water would follow the same thing. It gets really difficult because I don't really fully understand entanglement of everything in the ether. I just know that I think the ether I think you can find the ether in the Bible. I think it's one of those things that can be distilled from a lot of different spiritual beliefs. I think that, like I said, Hebrews, I think talks about it. I think, and when you said feeling, I think you're absolutely right. I actually think you're 100% right when you said faith is a feeling. Like you're saying, I think we were kind of arguing semantics a little bit with that, because you yourself, that you feel that acceleration yourself, and you're moving towards the same thing, but that feeling that you get is kind of what's leading you and bringing you along. Now, when it comes to religious or spiritual beliefs or faith in faith in God and looking at as Christ as the path to get there, I don't know. That's a really interesting thing. But I think that the alignment or the attunement to it is what's really being described when you say, when in the book of Romans, Paul says it's with your mouth that you confess and are justified, and or that you confess and are saved, and with your heart that you believe and are justified. Right. And so, but what's interesting about that is there's some twisted stuff about that if you get into what the New Age stuff. And the biggest thing about New Age belief and New Age garbage, that was the biggest red flag for me, was when I actually understood where the law of attraction was coming from. And it's coming from, it literally is coming from the Gospel of Thomas, which if you go, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but
Doubting Thomas, buddy.
Well, this isn't,
but see, and it's a lost book.
Oh, it's creepy. Going. Oh yeah. Bullshit. It's a lost book. My ass. Hey. No. The premise of it is that it's Lucifer, actually.
Okay.
The premise of the Gospel of Thomas is that it's Lucifer. Okay. And saying 22 in the Gospel of Thomas, and I'll argue people to the death about this. They tell me this isn't what it says. It's what it says. It says that, I'm paraphrasing, and this is absolutely my perception of what it says, is that it says that you need to be asexual, completely like hermaphroditic, only one sex, and there needs to be some sort of biodigital convergence for you to get into heaven. I swear to God that I firmly believe that's what it says.
We can't bring all that into this. We're already in an hour and a half at, man.
Oh man, sorry, but yeah,
no. I'm just saying, like, it's definitely going to be a rough edit, and we can take what we need out of it and whatever. But you're saying a mouthful, right? Because again, I just gave you UAE, March 2022. The House of Abraham was built, right, and that gives the edification of the one world religion. This will be the grounds where the Antichrist walks, breaks the treaty, 3.5 years plus 3.5 years, 7 years. And he will receive the chains and the hooks in his jaw, be dragged out and put into the pit, buried for 1,000 years of Jubilee of peace.
The globe deception is 100% part of it, I believe.
Thank you. Yeah.
Because, and Albert Pike. I mean, you can read Albert Pike's letter to Manziona or Manzio. I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a letter published. Are you familiar with Albert Pike and that wrinkle? Oh, this you should look at Albert Pike's letter. Write that down.
Are you familiar with the prophecy of Saint Malachi?
No.
That's what I'm saying, right? There's so much, right? Well, we can only do what resides with us, right? And I appreciate your testimony and witness to it, but again, it resided with you. You can purport to it. Go ahead, but everything finds everybody else and provides you with the evidence you need.
Sure, absolutely. So Albert Pike outlined the way to foment three world wars, is what he called them. And so the second one was to bring about the death of Nazism, the end of Nazism, right?
That's correct. The Third Reich.
And there's all these false dichotomies that they've created. The third one is going to be fomented by what we're seeing now, probably even started about 30 years ago or 40. Well, started longer than that. But they said basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to disillusion Christians with Christianity. They're trying to destroy communism and God and atheism. They're trying to use Zionism and the Nation of Islam to mutually destroy each other, to bring about a one world religion under Lucifer. That's what Albert Pike wrote in 1875. And it's pretty creepy when you read it. It's been published.
It's on point. So the prophecy,
absolutely.
as an example, this prophecy of Saint Malachi. I don't know. You have to look it up. The prophecy of Saint Malachi, if you want to, right? But he listed off the 112 popes, and he said as soon as the 112 popes seat,
I am familiar with
it would
that.
be the nod to the Catholic Church had fallen.
Yeah.
Right? And sure enough, this is the dude that commissioned and signed off on the building of the House of Abraham in the UAE, which was just completed. He's the dude that sold out the Catholic Church. Again, these are going to be the grounds that we cannot worship Jesus on.
Yeah. I mean, it's, no, I know that actually, you need to look at Noahide laws too, because that's the other thing that's coming.
Do you know about the Shemitah? Have you studied the Shemitah?
Not the Shemitah. I'm not familiar with that, but I understand.
Okay, so the Shemitah, and it's just a concept in Judaism, right? And I believe it's the Torah, right? Okay. Shemitah year happens every 7 years. So every 7 years, there's an event. 1945, World War II, right? And you keep going every 7 years. 2022, my friend, is a Shemitah year. Okay. Add on 7 years to that, makes it 2029, which is a Shemitah year. Subtract 2,000 years exactly to the year is the age of the church, the age of the Gentiles. Okay. They laid Jesus to rest 29 AD. 33 years, he was born 3 BC. Again, there's some plus or minus in there with the zeros and the ones. But 2,000 years post brings us to 2029 AD. Minus 7 is the time Daniel's 70th week, Jacob's trouble, right? The tribulation. Here we are, 2022.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I mean, those synchronicities are they're everywhere, and that, yeah.
Did you see the astrological alignment in the sky that just took place on June 14th?
I did not. No.
Strawberry full moon.
I did not.
So the rapture, the talk about have you studied the rapture at all?
A little bit, yeah. I am. Revelations is one part of the Bible. Most of my study is Old Testament, and then
Revelation should scare the crap out of you.
Well, there's no reason to fear. There's nothing to fear.
Well, you say my mom's the first person to say we didn't read Revelations growing up, Kilian. And I said, yeah, that's fine. It's 2022. I'll read Revelations if I'd like. And the alignment, the astrological alignment in the sky just showed the fish escaping the sea, right?
Really?
Palma, the volcano that was on fire off the coast of Spain, right? It has Saint Michael on the flag slaying the reptile, the devil.
Okay.
The spear into it, and he's standing on his chest. That's their flag. That volcano was erupting solid. It blacked out the sky, did all the things, and people aren't paying attention because it's not being reported. Like I didn't know any of that. It's all good, but it's all in Revelations, right? When the sky will be blacked out and all these things. So that moon that we just had on August 14th is the gleaming, or it's a strawberry full moon. And of course, the gleaming, the fruit are the first fruits, right? The gleaming fruit. Those are the most bright red, luscious fruits that you would pick, right? That's just the concepts are all there. It's a question of how we interact and entertain them. I don't know what's going to happen and how it all shakes out, but I can identify the things that are on the wall, as in when you look at the Torah, talk about end times.
Well, and you bring up Judaism too, and an interesting point with a lot of stuff that you see. Did you know that in one of the gender things is pretty torn into it? You know that the Talmud says that there are 8 genders, and that the Jews believe that God is male and female. And Scripture, it's interesting because Scripture kind of makes it look like that there's probably something to that. Now, I'm not saying it's hard for me to argue that when I look at the creation story and God created Adam in his image, and then he split Adam in two and created Eve. And if you really, really get down into the Hebrew word of it, that word rib, it looks like he pulled Eve out of Adam's abdomen, almost like he took the womb out of Adam and created Eve almost. I mean,
Yeah,
you could, it's
semantics, right? These are semantics, right?
But
that's the whole thing.
But when you take that, and then the theosophist belief about creation, and is really, really, really close. It's the Masonic belief about creation. Are you familiar with the Masonic creation story?
Nope.
That there
it's
are
satanic teaching, though. Masonic. I have a problem with that.
Well, it's interesting
with Masons. That's why I didn't talk to FTFE, because he's a Mason.
Well, is he? I'm sure he is. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
I mean, look at what he's pushing. I mean, like,
well, he's Scottish, right, man?
He's a science guy.
Yeah. So okay. So the top.
This
of
is
my
why
head,
I did this screen, by the way.
What's that?
That's why I picked this screen, because he worked on a submarine, and if I ended up debating him, I was going to break this out and ask him about his relationship with the periscope, because it has straight lines on it.
That's funny. So for illustration point, let's say the top of my hand is God. Mm-hmm. And my fingers are attributes of God.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Kabbalistic thing is Ein Sof. And Ein Sof is boom here. It's just an attribute of God. And there's this tree of life with all of these different entrances into the realm and different fingers that you can look at after the perturbation and say that they're separate. But the Kabbalistic thing says they're all the same. Okay. So then the Masonic thing is that one of the Elohim impregnated Eve, and then Cain was born. And then Yahweh.
Do you think about that? Hold on. Cain impregnated Eve.
No, one of the Elohim impregnated Cain.
Got it.
I'm sorry, back up. One of the what the Masonic belief is that one of the Elohim impregnated Eve, and then Cain was born. And then God created Adonai, which is Lord, right? And then Adonai created Jesus, or then Adonai created Adam. And then Adam impregnated Eve, and then Abel was born. And that Cain worked the land, and that Abel did not. And that Abel is the feminine expression of God, and Cain is the masculine expression of God. And that Abel is spiritual, and Cain is physical. So Cain went out and worked the land, and Abel just took what God made. And so when they gave their offerings to God, God was pleased with Abel's, because Abel said, God, what you gave me is good enough. And so then Cain killed Abel. And that's why he killed Abel. And so that put enmity between men and women from day one. Now there's all kinds of weird stuff in that, right? But this is according to Rudolf Steiner, the explanation of the Masonic creation story. Then if you go and you start looking at like Mormonism and what Joseph Smith said, you can totally see how Joseph Smith basically just took that story and pared it down and gave pieces of it, and then he created Mormonism from that tree. I mean, like all of you, there's so many of these things that are coming branching off of it. And what causes me to pause with Christianity more than anything else is the Council of Nicaea and the canonization of the New Testament. And it causes me to, there's a couple of experiential things that I've had in my life that made me feel a little more comfortable with my questioning of it. And now I can't make a hard statement or judgment one way or the other, whether or not I believe in the personification of Christ, and that if I don't attune to the gospel story, then I can't wind up, in heaven, right? I don't know if I believe that or not. Okay,
totally fair.
And I can't honestly, because I've had experiential things that say it is true, and I've had experiential things that say it's not. Okay. And that's all I really know. That's the only real proof or evidence that I can go on. But I will say that I do one thing that I think is 150,000% true. It's certainly there was an event on Golgotha. There's something that certainly happened.
Have you 100%. Found these sites yet? When I say found them, have you found the evidence that satisfies you in terms of like, again, Noah's Ark, Mount Sinai?
Mhm.
Have you found these things, or are you on your quest for them?
What, like found them like
The physical, the actual places that they
have I actually gone out there physically?
No. I mean, have you seen them as in found them on the internet, right? Your views.
Sure. Well, sure. Yeah.
Finding them.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen Golgotha. I've seen Skull Rock. I've seen the your was it Skull Mountain or whatever. I also know that that Christ wasn't crucified on a cross. He was crucified on a tree.
I can't. I'm not going to get into all that with you, my friend. That's that. No, and again, because my evidence is contrary to that. My evidence gives stuff to that, and that's like it flies in the face of the things that I
know, and then I don't want to, and that's and it's not. I don't, I mean, it's not meant or intended to be personal or anything like that. And we probably, we've talked for quite a while, so we probably could go on about that for a very, very long time. But yeah, I mean, so what, I guess, of why we talked, and I hope I haven't, disappointed you.
Not at all. It's more of just I'm not by any stretch of the imagination, and that's something that I have to make very clear with being who I am and talking and being public. Sure. And all that stuff is I'm not here to dictate your relationship with Jesus or God or any of the Trinity. And that goes for anybody that listens to my content or anything else. I speak from the heart, and whatever comes my way in terms of attraction and things like that, that's what we can work with, right? I'm not sure about the trying to smack somebody over the head with the truth and beat them into
yeah, well, that's a right. Terrible thing. That's a terrible thing, a terrible way to do it. That's what I told Craig on the thing. I was like, you realize